Hello there, this screencast is going to sort of outline the option explicit statement. Some of you may have been wondering why on on all of my modules I have an option explicit statement at the top. So I will sort of demonstrate why that's important here. So you notice here I do not have the option explicit statement, just to kind of show you something. I've got a sub here, I've defined a variable equal 10, and I'm just going to do a message box variable plus 2, so obviously that should be 12, then another message box that should display 14, and finally another one with 16. So if I go through this using F8, we set my look in the locals window, I've got that as it should be, then I press F8 again and we get my message box, or my variable plus 2, which is expected, variable plus 4, which is expected, and finally the variable plus 16, which is expected. So it's all fine and dandy when you do everything correctly. However, what if I accidentally, and spelling errors are quite common, what if I accidentally spell this AI instead of IA? Then we run through this and it doesn't detect that there are any problems, so we message box the 12, we message box the 14, and look what happens now. In message box is 6 instead of 16. So obviously there's an error here, and you wouldn't otherwise know because you haven't told the editor to look for errors and declare all variables, which is what the option explicit statement does. So you wouldn't know better, and if this was in some sort of calculation, you would just assume that everything was fine and dandy. So to eliminate this problem, what we do is we write the option explicit statement at the top, and now when we run this, you notice that first of all you need to define or declare all variables. So we're going to go ahead and do that first, and you do that with the dim statements that we've talked about a little bit and we will talk about more. So we dim our variable, and in this case it's just going to take on integer values, so I'm just going to dim it as an integer, and now we try to run this. It's going to catch those spelling mistakes, or it's going to catch things that we haven't dimmed. Mainly it's for spelling mistakes. So then we would go in there and we'd say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and switch this back to variable, and now everything should work fine. We do the 12, we do the 14, and finally the 16. Instead of having to write this every time, the option explicit statement, you can go up here to tools and you can go into options. And if you go into the editor there's a require variable declaration. So just make sure that's clicked on. By default, it's clicked off. So just click that on, and it might not take place right away, but the next time you open up the editor or Excel, the option explicit statement should be there. All right, so this sort of clarifies why you need to use that option explicit and how to make it automatic on all of your procedures.